Lady Justice used to stand so tall, blindfold on, she'd hear us all. Rich or poor didn't matter then, truth would speak, justice would win. But somewhere along this winding road, the scales grew heavy and the system slowed down. Money talks and power plays while victims wait for better days. Where has justice gone? Where did she flee? The blindfold slipping. Now we see the game is rigged, the deck is stacked. Lady Justice used to stand so tall, blindfold on, she'd hear us all. Rich or poor didn't matter then, truth would speak, justice would win. But somewhere along this winding road, the scales grew heavy and the system slowed down. Money talks and power plays while victims wait for better days. Where has justice gone? Where did she flee? The blindfold slipping. Now we see the game is rigged, the deck is stacked for those who can't fight back. Where has justice gone? Predators get off easy while families mourn what can't be fixed. The courtroom doors swing both ways, but not for those who can't pay. We must fight for those we've lost, count every tear, pay every price. Stand tall when systems fail, seeking truth behind the veil. Where has justice gone? Where did she flee? The blindfold slipping. Now we see the game is rigged, the deck is stacked for those who can't fight back. But where has justice gone? Protect the innocent, protect the child, no matter race or creed or color, rich or poor, it shouldn't matter. Justice is what we're after for all. Affluence can't buy a free pass when children's safety is what we ask. Every child deserves the same protection in justice's name. From the courthouse to the highest court, justice feels like a last resort. But we won't stop, we won't give in until justice lives again. We'll bring justice home. Make her see that equal treatment. The key, fix the scale, straighten the stack for those who can't fight back. We'll bring justice home. Lady Justice, hear our call, stand for one, stand for all. Put the blindfold back in place. Give us truth. Give us grace.
Live on the air, Trial Junkies United presents Justice After Dark with your host, Z. No, but I got you straightened out, babe.
These issues. We've talked about Allison's case early years when we first started about a year ago. Jana was going to be on, but family comes first, and she had some family obligations that day. But tonight is here with us, and this is going to be one case. It's going to be multiple cases because this is something that shows police corruption and just people not doing their job, and we don't understand why. Jana, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us tonight. You have our deepest sympathy because I know you've dealt two tragic blows here with your niece and your great niece. Arionna was sadly the first young lady that didn't make it, and you got no justice there, correct?
Correct.
And then you have Allison, and again, no justice. But what's the thing that connects both of those cases?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And thanks everybody for tuning in, listening to this. This is one of those cases that I do believe has a propensity to have a blueprint for the rest of this country to take on these injustices. The common denominator in this situation is MPD, Minneapolis Police Department, which we know has a long history of racial discrimination with American Indians, decades long. This is documented from even since when I was a child. And the other common denominator with both of these cases is the same homicide detective, Sergeant Heyer, Michael Heyer. So he was the lead homicide detective in Arionna's case and in Allison's case.
And I think it's important for the audience to understand we've had cases where something has happened on the reservation. So you have the jurisdictional roulette. Oh, it's your case. It's your case. This isn't that situation because this was in the city of Minneapolis. And that should have there should have been no discussion. They should have been able to come in there and handle it correctly, right?
Well, they should have, but the history of them is, I don't remember what their success rate, conviction rate of homicides is that like 20%, maybe 20% of all homicides get convicted in the city of Minneapolis. You go right across the border over to St. Paul, it's like 80%. It doesn't make sense. We are considered the Twin Cities, but the departments are that vastly different.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And with Ariana's case, they didn't even check like anything on her case.
So now here's the deal with Ariana's case is that Arionna is finally going to get justice. So Arionna, they just charged, they extradited one of her killers from a Kentucky prison on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. About a month and a half prior to that, they charged a killer here in Minneapolis that they had. But the thing is that hindsight, looking at everything that I'm looking at, it took 6 years. It took 6 years of evidence. And I know not everybody knows this case in regards to what's happening here in Minneapolis, but Allison's case is deemed one of the most high-profile cases in the state of Minnesota at this point. There were two cases, Davis Maturie, a Black man, that was shot through the neck after 19 911 calls from his white neighbor. Davis Maturie moved into this neighborhood. Unbeknownst to him, his neighbor that he moved in next to, a lot of the other neighbors had significant issues with him. Turns out we didn't know this until the audit came out, right? So right. Davis Maturie had 19 911 calls that went unanswered to MPD. This John Chachek had threatened Davis Maturie, threatened to stab him. He knocked him off of his ladder while he was cleaning windows one day. He chased him around with a shovel, threatened his life. This Davis Maturie called 911 19 different times. Not one of these cases were sent up for charging. It was late October. It was a really nice day here in Minnesota. And if you guys don't know Minnesota weather, you never know what you're going to get. Oh, yeah. You could get a snowstorm in October,
right. Yep.
And it could be 80 degrees in October. It was a nice day that day. And this John Chachek opened up his window while Davis Maturie was cleaning up his leaves, shot him through the neck. Did not kill him. He survived. But it took Minneapolis Police Department 4 days to go in and to make this arrest. 4 days. So they sat there with like maybe a squad car or two, I don't even know what it was, outside of this man's house, waiting for this arrest. And there was this big controversy between MPD and Mary Moriarty, which is the Hennepin County attorney, right? And so they were butting heads and they were each blaming each other. The bottom line is that the case was never even sent up for charging at that point. So they were sitting there for 4 days, and the story goes is that Hennepin County Attorney's Office never even had that case for charging. So I'm not really quite sure what is going on here. I mean, I do know what's going on, but this is what we are dealing with because of after the murder of George Floyd up here. I think the state had to put some safety nets in place, which meant for the Minneapolis City Council to have deemed, I think it was $175,000, just in case another case like George Floyd happened to come across the path, right? Which we knew it was going to happen. It's inevitable with MPD, right? And so that happened in 2020, George Floyd. It took until 2025, 5 years, for more cases to come across the desk. But nobody knew this. So you would have had to have had an in to know what this process was, right? And so this audit, his name was Robert Timmerman. He's the city auditor, so he doesn't do necessarily cases like this, but they had this money set aside for him to do this case, $175,000. Davis Maturie's case was the first one to get this audit to see what MPD did or did not do in the case and how they failed Davis Maturie's case. Allison's case came about 2 weeks after Davis Maturie because of the public pressure, because we went in front of the Community Commission on Police Oversight Committee many times yelling and screaming about Allison's name, because we thought that they had power to control the police, because they were put in place specifically to oversee the MPD. But we realized...
So that was what the auditor was for. He was supposed, ever since that first case, that happened up there that you talked about with Foreman, right?
Yep. George Floyd.
George Floyd, I'm sorry. They put this audit system into effect.
Correct.
And so nobody was... I can't even imagine what the auditor said when he saw all the times that this man called the police and nobody did anything.
I think that what happens a lot of the time in the city of Minneapolis is that these calls go unanswered, and it's easy for everybody to think and to use the excuse of George Floyd after George Floyd's death, after his murder, right, that Minneapolis PD, a lot of officers quit. They left the department. And I think they did that because of the city of Minneapolis finally had enough. And these organizations and the people just said, no, enough, and hence the riots. But I don't believe that even with those riots, and I'm not going to get off track on this, but those riots and the burning in the city did not come from people from Minneapolis. That did not come from our own people. That came from outside agencies, wherever these people came from. Right. It does not equate, I think that was proven again and again and again, that those people that came in were the ones that torched the city. Yeah. So
Semi said that she has friends up there that have had run-ins with the cops also.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Minneapolis PD is corrupt. They have a history of corruption. If you guys don't know.
Yeah, go ahead and explain to them the history of them.
What they are known to be is that they are the biggest gang in the world. MPD is deemed the biggest gang in the world because we've got such big numbers and because of the corruption of this department. If you guys don't know, so they had not Freeman, Bob Kroll. Bob Kroll was the director, basically the chief, the whatever he was, of the Minneapolis Police Federation. He is married to Liz Collins, right? And we all know who these people are. Liz Collins, we know who she is, right? Right. That really conservative reporter, right? And so Bob Kroll had control of the Federation, the Minneapolis PD's Police Federation. So he was the leader of it for many, many years. MPD is known as racist, corrupt. I mean, they walk this fine line between a criminal and law enforcement. That's what this is. And
Yeah.
so that's the history. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, Minneapolis PD threw 2 natives in the trunk of their car and brought them to jail, thinking that this was okay. This
Yeah.
is the history. They used to bring us down to the river and take turns beating them. You know, yeah, there's such a long line of corruption and plain and simple, they hate natives. American or Minnesota, Minneapolis has the highest population of urban Indians of anywhere.
Okay.
And
I did not know
Minneapolis,
that.
many people don't know that, but Minneapolis PD, they hate natives. They always have, you know. And I think right now it's coming out, and I think that what's going to happen in the next, hopefully at least the next 6 months, that the world is going to see what is happening here.
And Simi said, my friends are either not white or not straight. And she says they catch heck just walking down the street in Minneapolis. You know,
You know, so I am part of Twin Cities Coalition for Justice.
okay.
Twin Cities Coalition for Justice. When we talk about these things in the whole country, we just saw what happened with this ICE occupation up here, right?
Yes.
And so when we saw what happened with this ICE occupation, and everybody has that No Kings is mainstreamed, right? No Kings is mainstreamed. It's under this big national organization. It's called 5050501, right? And what they are is they are all middle-aged white men and women. You know, that 100,000 was probably, 99,000 of them were white men and women from the suburbs or from the city. They were not people of color. They weren't American Indians. There were very few, right? There were very few Black, African Americans, Hispanics. There just weren't that many that were there, so that's what that was. And so that organization is heavily funded by a lot of money. Hence, that's why you guys see that. But they're not the movers and the shakers of what just happened and what just held off ICE here in Minnesota. That's not what that was. It
No.
was the organizations that are the grassroots programs that do not take funding, that do not take grants, because as soon as you do, your hands are tied and your voice is muzzled.
Yeah. And so let's go back to let's see how did we get to Allison, the audit for Allison? Because explain to the audience, first of all, what happened to Allison.
So Allison had a history of domestic violence with her partner, and on again, off again relationship with this guy. He struggled with addiction. She struggled with addiction. We're not really quite sure where he was from, but this guy had a long history of domestic violence with other women. In fact, he was on the enhanced list. The enhanced list in the state of Minnesota means that from the first time of your first felony conviction for a domestic, then if you get another one, that spans 10 years, right? So then you get off of that in 10 years. And so Chuck Fos, that was my niece's partner and ultimate killer, Allison lived in a really affluential area in the North Loop of Minneapolis. On February 13th, it was a Tuesday night, right before Valentine's Day, she let this guy into her apartment. And at about 6:30 p.m., he began beating her and choking her. He strangled her. He ripped off all of her clothing because he knew that that was the way of control and torture, because no woman wants to run naked, right? So he would always withhold her clothes or rip them off of her. So he was beating her, choking her. She ran. She had enough bravery, so she ran to the next door neighbors in the apartment building. It was the gal that takes care of the whole building, right? And so she opened up the door. They called 911 about 6:45 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and the officers arrived shortly after. And they went to Allison's apartment, and he was GOA, gone on arrival. And that's a huge turn for MPD and law enforcement. And that's going to play into this because it's a huge factor in what happened here. So he wasn't in her apartment. They went there. They said he's gone. If he comes back, call us. We will come back and we'll arrest him. But you only have until midnight on Friday to do so because Minnesota has a 72-hour state statute, right? Excluding the first 24. So right now it's 8:26. If I was to be beaten tonight, or anyone was to be beaten tonight, if the officers arrived at 8:26 right now, the first 24 hours means until 11:59. The clock starts at midnight. They said, you only have until midnight on Friday to call us if he comes back, and we'll come back and we'll arrest him. Well, she got back a little bit after midnight on Friday, and she heard somebody in her apartment. She knew it was him. And so she went down to another neighbor's apartment. They called 911. The two officers that came on Tuesday, the same two that came on Tuesday, came on Friday. So they knew the abuse. They knew that he had beat her and choked her and stripped her of her clothing. You know what they did? They went to the apartment. They found him in there, and he said he was just picking up a few of his things. So they let him go without incident, they said. Let him go without incident. They could have made up any charges. They could have, breaking and entering, I don't know, trespassing, anything, but they didn't do it. They let him go. And so then the following day, Allison's sister had messaged her, and this was I don't know, a bunch of them had been messaging her during that day. And Allison struggled with addiction, right? And so we knew that she was having withdrawals because she kept on asking, hey, can you bring me something? I'm too afraid to leave my apartment, and one of her sisters had said, I thought you were coming over at 5:09 p.m. I thought you're coming over today at 5:09 p.m. on Saturday. And Allison said, I can't. I'm too afraid to leave. Chuck was in my apartment last night. And her sister texted her, I thought they were supposed to arrest him because you filed for an order for protection. You have an OFP. She said it was never served because in the state of Minnesota, you have 10 days to get that served. If they don't serve it in 10 days, it's null and void. Allison filed for an OFP October 23rd of 2023, November 2nd, 10 days apart. Neither one of them were served, right? And so then her sister was just mad. She was like, that's bullshit. But Allison said, but I think he's sitting outside of my apartment in a stolen vehicle. She's texting her sister this. And she was like, well, why do you think that? She says, because I ordered a pizza when I went downstairs to get it. He texted me and said, you're lucky that was a delivery driver. If I get arrested for this, it's going to be for something good. So watch your fucking back. I believe Allison wound up dead that day. So
that is just insane.
Well,
that nobody served this protective order twice.
Yep. And then that 72-hour state statute, right? That 72-hour state statute that these officers didn't know what they were talking about. They could have made up anything to arrest this guy, but that's how incompetent and lazy they are. They made a choice to not do so, right? And
yeah, because that place did not have his name on it, correct? Her apartment?
Correct.
So then he broke in. That's
Well,
breaking and entering.
Not only that, but that was the government-funded housing. And you know damn well that they cannot have a man in that apartment. It is that name and that name only, right?
Yeah.
And so it really, there's a lot of really significant issues with this. So nobody heard from her. Well, they did hear from her for a few days, I guess. But they finally did a welfare check because they were doing I don't know, they were doing some sort of inspection in the apartment building. And so the apartment manager, she goes up there, the one that she had called on Tuesday or helped her on Tuesday, right? They went to her apartment because they said, well, Allison hadn't responded. So she gets there and she sees that all of this mail sitting outside of Allison's apartment, right? And so she's like, okay, something's not right. So she goes get somebody else and says, let's go in there. And so when they went in there, they found Allison deceased, laying on her bed, a bunch of needles around her body, and the light and the TV was on, right? But the door was unlocked. The door was unlocked. Yep.
Yeah.
And so they called 911. The officers responded. The squad car got there, and they said they came out. They called it a suspicious death. The medical examiner called it a suspicious death. They got there. There was, I don't know if it was the second squad car that had gotten there, but it was the supervisor called off crime scene. He was the one that decided to call off crime scene, right? So no forensics were done in this case whatsoever. And, you know, everybody keeps on making saying, well, he was going to have his fingerprints in this apartment anyways. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't inventory those needles because we don't believe those were her needles, right? Because she didn't, I mean, it wasn't a nice, neat apartment, but she didn't live like a pig like that. She wasn't like that. And so, you know, I don't believe that they really investigated this as a homicide. They never even put up crime scene tape. They didn't actually make the apartment building change locks. They did nothing in this, right? And so the very first night of her death, American Indians start a fire. It's a spirit fire, right?
Okay.
And so if I was to die tonight, a fire would be automatically started out here. And it would be lit for 4 days. And what that does is that signifies the warmth and light until our next life, right?
Okay.
And so that's why that thing remains lit for 4 nights. And so the very first night of the fire, I actually wasn't even here, but there were people coming over, strangers coming over to the fire, saying that this Chuck Fos was out in the community bragging to everybody that he beat my niece to death. She begged for her life. And they were coming that very first night. So 4 nights had gone by. I was in Florida. I flew back and I was here the night of the wake. And I started asking questions. I started asking the sisters, well, when was the last time you heard from her? Where are the text messages? Because they all said, Auntie, he killed her. Even the neighbors were there. They said he killed her. Everyone said he killed her, right? And so I started kind of putting 2 and 2 together. And Allison's son, Josh, you know, I asked him, I said, Josh, do we have a detective yet for this? And he looks in his phone. He says, yeah. He says, Sergeant Hire. That was Arianna's homicide detective. And I said, at that point, we had received 1 phone call back in 3 years. My heart broke. And I said, oh my God. I said, we're so screwed at this point. We are screwed at this point as a family. We're never going to get justice. We're never going to get an investigation. And so we buried Allison, you know, and the sisters had said to me, you know, I started saying, well, when was the last time you heard from her? And they're like, well, we heard from her on the 18th and 19th, but they said she was texting, but we didn't talk to her. But they said, we don't think it's her. We think somebody else has her phone because she would never respond in this fashion. Right. And so I was like, okay. So I left that Sergeant Hire because I already had his number, you know, 2 or 3 messages, never heard back from this guy. So the state MMIR office, you know, actually, this is the one good thing that they did. The one good thing that they did in this case, because the chick happened to be there. And so they called the supervisor of Sergeant Hire and said, you need to speak to this aunt. And so I actually didn't hear from him for quite some time. We buried Allison and we staged a protest. I staged a protest from Allison's apartment building down to the precinct, because I started putting all this stuff together and it didn't make sense. None of this made sense, right?
Right.
And you know, even with the gal that takes care of the apartment manager, you know, she even said, yeah, they never came. They didn't pull video camera of this apartment. They didn't ask us questions. They did nothing. They never asked the family any questions about this, right? So March 2nd. March 2nd was a Saturday, you know, was my staged protest. And we put this out on social media. But it was March 1st at about 5:30 p.m. Sergeant Hire called me. And I was talking to him. I'm like, you know, hey, what's going on? Did you find Allison's phone? Do you have her phone? He says, no, we don't have her phone. I'm like, well, do you think her phone walked out of the apartment by itself?
Yeah.
I said, did you?
She's deceased. So where did the phone, the phone
Yeah.
grew legs and walked out.
That's exactly it, right? And I said, well, did you ping her phone? Nope. I said, did you call it? Did you find Chuck? Did you interview him? Nope. I said, did you pull the video camera coverage in the apartment building? He says, no. He says, why would I do that? I said, because he killed her. Because he killed her, right? Because I've got these text messages from the sisters looking at them that he was sitting there. He was hunting her. He was stalking my niece the day that she died.
And he was threatening her.
Mm-hmm.
You have the visible threats. You have the texts.
What did Hires say to that?
He just said that, why would I do this? That was his response. That's it.
Well, because it's your job? I mean, good
Right?
night.
Right. And so we waited, right? We did that first protest, shut down the streets, went to the police department, that sort of thing. I waited and waited. But in the meantime, we started putting like more stuff together, talking to neighbors. And they just confirmed everything that I had already known, that the MPD didn't do an investigation into this, right?
So truthfully, you were investigating. You were talking to the neighbors. You were collecting evidence and statements.
Yep.
Well, 100. They did nothing.
Yep. I had all of the evidence from the sisters. And we had the tribal liaison for the MPD was also one of Allison's relatives. She had eyes on every single document of Allison's case. And she said, call for an immediate arrest of Chuck Fos. I had no idea what she meant, but she had eyes on every single record. Right. I have 167 pages of past documents of my niece getting tortured, beaten by this guy. And none of these charges sent up for charging. None of these cases sent up for charging. 167 pages of documentation from MPD, wow. And so we waited for 7 weeks for the autopsy report to come back, right? Okay. And that medical examiner's report, very vague. They wouldn't give us the full detailed one with everything, all the forensics on. She died of a subdural hematoma, not of a drug overdose. She had fentanyl and methamphetamine in her system. That wasn't a surprise. But according to the medical examiner, so here's the kicker, what people don't understand. Okay. Cause of death and manner of death are two different things, right? Cause of death is the subdural hematoma. The manner of death on how she got that, the medical examiner doesn't know, because her skull wasn't bashed in the shape of a hammer, right?
Right.
There wasn't something laying next to her. Her skull wasn't bashed in. She just had the subdural hematoma.
But
right?
Then how would the coroner know if they took no pictures or did an investigation that he wouldn't know what was on the bed or near her? I'm sorry, coroner, you didn't do your job either, because you didn't ask the questions like, where are the photos? Yep. Where are my crime scene photos?
I keep going back. I keep going back to, if they would have just taken the needles and find out, do fingerprint tests on them. If there were no fingerprints on them, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Yep. That could have done so much in this case, but yet all of that evidence is gone because they didn't do any of it. They didn't do any of it. They could have pinged her phone, and their excuse is, what we would have had a subpoena, and it was a suspicious death. So that autopsy report came back. It's on record that the medical examiner so she was found deceased on the 22nd, so decomposed that even the officers said, we think she died on the 17th. I don't know how they put that 2 and 2 together. The medical examiner said the same thing, right? But they can't put a timeline on that. So that medical examiner, the day of the 23rd, when she was doing that autopsy, she told me she got off the phone immediately, got on to the phone, called homicide, and said she has a subdural hematoma. You need to investigate this as a homicide. She called that department several times. This is documented to forewarn them that this was a possible homicide, right? And they still didn't do it. The negligence in this case is great, that they still did not do an investigation after their own medical examiner said this is a suspicious death and we think possibly she died. So that's why cause, manner does matter. But the medical examiner can't determine that without an investigation, right? So fast forward. So keep on pushing with this stuff. It wasn't until, and God, I had gotten so many phone calls from various people saying that they had evidence, they had, they knew this and they knew that. And I've told the story thousands of times in every room that I could possibly tell this story. And finally, this investigative reporter listened. Her name was Liz Sawyer from the Star and Tribune. She sat down with me. It was December 2025, and probably early December. And she listened to this case. She says, okay, I'll start investigating it. She investigated it. And, a lot of other reporters have told me the same thing, that they were going to investigate this stuff. Never came true. Right. And so I was just like, I was holding my breath, whatever. But she kept on calling me. And so she had an inside source with the department. And so it gave me hope. And she says, oh my God, Jana. She was just like, you're not going to believe this. And I'm like, I'm not going to believe what, right? And so I was just like, what? So she started telling me, she says her inside source had all of these records. Well, Allison's phone, there were 3 different 911 calls to MPD that were documented, right? 3 different 911 calls that said that one was Chuck's old, childhood friend that said Chuck was over there saying that he beat his girlfriend to death, used a different girlfriend's name, and said he beat her to death in the south side of Minneapolis. Allison died in the north side, right? So that was one of them, just random, out of the blue, that he was calling saying that Chuck was, saying these crazy things. Another one was at the encampment that, somebody called from the encampment and said, this guy Chuck is, bragging that he beat his girlfriend to death, right? And then the third one was this girl. And, I don't necessarily want to give her name, right? Because anyways,
that's
fine. Yeah.
And so, but she was coming back. She went down to the homeless encampment to see her son, and her son was palling around with this Chuck, right? And so they're walking back from the homeless encampment, and Chuck Fos is saying, he's talking crazy. He's a meth addict, right? And he's talking crazy. He says, I've got this phone. And he thinks that the FBI is tracking this phone that he's got. They're like thinking, okay, you're tweaking, right? And so they said, they're just like, whatever. And he said that he beat his girlfriend to death. And that was her phone. And he had these 2 screwdrivers, and he tortured her with these screwdrivers, right? And so this other girl that was this female's friend, was on the phone talking to her at the time, I guess. And this phone was not taken away. It was left there that very day, right? But it wasn't turned in for a month down the road, because the girl that kept that phone at her house, at her apartment, and those screwdrivers had a warrant out for arrest. She had to be talked into it by another female in the community saying, that's Allison's phone. Well, guess what? It was Allison's phone. Allison's phone was taken away from Chuck Fos 3 days prior to anyone even knowing Allison was deceased, February 19th.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, this is documented with an MPD, right?
But not investigated. Documented, but not investigated.
Correct. So all of this stuff came out, right? All of these failures came out. And so finally we went in front of the city council. We went in front of all of these agencies and organizations and said, we need You know, I mean, I've had armored vehicles surrounding me because I refused to accept the answers that MPD was giving me because I know what's right. Right. And so the Minneapolis City Council finally gave, I think it was last March of 2025, gave Allison's case that audit. So for 15 months, this auditor tried to interview all of these cops within the department, right? Within MPD. And so under that whole thing of the Federation, they kept on responding to the auditor in like one or two sentences, dragging their feet, not cooperating with him, right? So all summer long had gone on, and I'm like, he would check in, you know, every month or two or whatever else it was. And I'm like, okay, well, how's it going? And finally, the report was supposed to be due in December of 2025. And he calls me and he says, yeah, just to let you know, Jana, he says, MPD, they're not cooperating. I'm really having a tough time getting MPD to cooperate. I'm like, that's not a surprise, is it? They're crap. They're trying to hide this. They've been trying to hide this from day one, right? And so he went in front of the city council. And if you guys know this, so if you guys ever want to do stuff like this, everything that is documented when you're speaking to the city council, it's on documentation forever. It's on TV. It's recorded forever for everyone to see. Everybody watches it. State legislators, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the mayor, everybody watches it, right? Because they watch the city council here. And so he went on in front of the city council and said, they're not cooperating. October 16th, I think it was maybe the 20th, that Chief O'Hara puts out a statement. He emails his whole department and says, you have got to cooperate with this auditor. If you do not cooperate with this auditor, you will face discipline citywide, right? To every officer in the city of Minneapolis. And so you think, all right, everything's going to go on, right? But that auditor told me, he says, yeah, we might get this audit done by February. And so anyways, I get an update right before Thanksgiving. And I said, after that email out to the department, I said, did you finally get to sit with Sergeant Hire? He says, no, Jana. He says he retired.
Yep. They let him retire because it was going to look bad on him.
Yeah.
Well, now here's the thing, you guys. All right. So he retired. He told the auditor, they told the auditor that he retired. I sat down with Chief O'Hara, right? This audit came out April 22nd. I sat with Chief O'Hara a week prior to this. So right after that, Mayor Fry got reelected to the city of Minneapolis as the mayor, right? Mm-hmm. I went to his inauguration and protested his inauguration after I heard that they let the lead homicide detective retire without interviewing with the auditor, right? So that was the public pressure, constantly putting pressure on these powers that be. If I get arrested, I get arrested. You know, I mean, that's my niece's lives, right? And so finally, the audit comes out, and or a week before the audit, Chief O'Hara sat down with me with his top brass, and I have the whole conversation recorded. And they blamed the medical examiner for calling off crime scene. He blames the medical examiner for calling off crime scene, right? In this, yeah. And
but it wasn't the medical examiner.
Nope. The medical examiner, in fact, called you multiple times to tell you that this was a homicide, right?
Because the cops should have called the medical or the crime scene investigators before the medical examiner even got there.
Correct.
But they called off the whole thing.
Yep, they called off the whole thing. And so now where we're sitting is that, so the audit report came out. And when I was sitting with Chief O'Hara and his top brass, they confirmed that actually, I said, well, didn't Sergeant Hire retire in August or September? They're like, no, He retired in December.
So they lied about that.
Of course they lied about this.
Okay,
And
wait
so
a minute.
this-
What was he due for retirement?
They can retire whenever they want to, they said.
Yeah.
Oh, not with any benefits.
Yeah.
Full pension and benefits.
Yeah.
And no
For not
discipline.
doing his job.
Yep.
Oh my.
That
So
is just
that-
ridiculous.
Yep. So that's what's happening up here. Chief O'Hara, Mayor Fry, Governor Waltz, they all knew it. And you know what? 2 big cases. Now, Minneapolis PD, if you've got this audit, you are under the microscope and you still allow the lead homicide detective in the case that we're calling out to retire without sitting with the auditor. That audit report came back with 4 of the officers that he was trying to get in touch with. 3 of them were on medical leave, right? The other one blatantly said, nope, I'm not sitting with you. That was Sergeant Hire.
Well, here's the thing. Have they not heard of a subpoena?
The auditor has no subpoena power.
Oh, yeah. Well, that
And of course, the
Man,
attorney general
talk
of the
about
state,
tying his hands.
or the county isn't going to do anything either.
And the attorney general, we've written to AG Allison and Governor Waltz, and neither one of them have a spine enough to do this. So we asked AG Allison to take over the case. So the case was actually submitted to Hennepin County Attorney's Office, right?
Right.
It was submitted, but she admitted that there was no evidence, not enough evidence to charge the case. That MPD sent this case up. They just wanted it off of their desk because I was causing such a ruckus and such a scene. They sent it up to her knowing damn well that she couldn't charge it. And so she actually took and put 2 of her detectives on the case.
Okay.
You know, kind of like what are those? Anyways, I was going to say Barney Fife and whatever his name
Yeah.
was, but
Yeah, Barney Fife, they only gave him 1 bullet and then he shot himself in the foot.
yeah, well, you know, I mean, nice men, but you know, I don't know how they could get any information. You can't just walk into our communities and think you're going to get anybody. You know, we found 4 or 5 different witnesses ourselves for them. You
Yeah.
know, and so that's where we're sitting. And so this public pressure, you guys, this public pressure of all of this stuff, that's why Arionna Buckanaga's case is now solved, because Chief O'Hara put this other guy, his name is Andrew Schroeder, in charge of homicide within the department. This guy's got a complaint list this long. It's vast, right? He's got
Right.
so many OPCR complaints, and they put him in charge of homicide. Well, that's why they circled back around with Ariana's case. I do believe that because all of that evidence was there, now they're trying to appease us and shut us up by solving
Right.
Ariana's case. That evidence was there the whole damn time.
Exactly.
It was there the whole time.
Yeah.
But I do believe that Sergeant Hire never took that DNA and entered it into a database, because if it would have been entered into that database, it would have pinged and we would have had that suspect. Yep. 3 months after her
For those
homicide.
asking, this is a picture of the mayor with his big veto pin.
Ugh.
He needs to veto himself
Yep.
because he's not holding his police department to account. Because if
He
he
is-
was, he would tell Detective Hire that you're going to come in.
It is
And,
is
or
he, is he
Sergeant
still
Hire.
around? Is Sergeant Hire even around anymore? Or is he in the
No.
wind?
He's retired. He's living somewhere like in Burnsville, Minnesota or somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, with his
Um,
full
If
bench-
they can ever get this to court, they would have to subpoena him.
Well, yeah.
That would be the only way they could get anything accomplished with him.
So
You know.
Yep. And so there's some more kickers here on this one. So since this Andrew Schroeder has taken over, and Chief O'Hara is actually, so the Minneapolis City Council is I think that they don't want to confirm Chief O'Hara to be chief of police again, right?
Right.
So what that veto pen was is that there's this Todd Barnett. Todd Barnett is the public safety commissioner, right?
Right.
And the Minneapolis City Council voted to get rid of him. Right. So they voted to get rid of him. That big veto pen right there, Mayor Fry wants to keep him. But the Minneapolis City Council understands what happened here with Allison's case, with ICE, with all of this stuff, and how they're allowing MPD to cover this stuff up under Mayor Fry and under Todd Barnett and under Chief O'Hara. Right.
Exactly.
And so, yep. So they were trying to get rid of Todd Barnett and they're trying to get rid of Chief O'Hara. And they should, because if you can possibly imagine a chief of police that is under a microscope like he has been, and he still allowed what he allowed after a direct order, you're incompetent, Chief O'Hara. You are incompetent.
Yeah, if you can't control your men after you give them a direct order, then why are you even in a uniform? Because they don't care. They don't listen to you.
Okay, what are the steps to get him kicked out of office? Because
I'm not positive.
Because the mayor actually has power over the chief of police, doesn't he?
He does, but he supports the chief of police. That's where the biggest issue is.
So the corruption goes all the way to the top.
Exactly.
I think it's bigger than that because, we've asked, Chief O'Hara stated that he asked the BCA to come in. The BCA was never asked to come into this case. Why would they want another lawsuit?
Yeah. And then they also just recently fired the woman that was in charge of the MMIP.
Yep.
And that was after May 5th, Red Dress Day.
Yep.
And they said that she wasn't doing her job, but they didn't give her the tools to do her job.
So right? I think that there's a bigger issue there, right?
Okay.
So the very first executive director of that office was Juliette Rudy. She was American Indian, right? But she was also a cop. She was also a cop with not a great history either from the St. Paul PD, right? And then you've got this every other American Indian that was Deanna Bolio. She was the tribal liaison for MPD. They fired her. You know why? Because they were trying to make differences. This other Naida, you know what? They were trying to make differences for the community, but these directives are coming from the top on down. Anna Negretti, and I had an issue with this. I know the designer of this dress with both of my murder nieces' handprints are on. I had an issue with her wearing a dress when she did so much damage to my niece's case. That's a whole nother situation, whole nother story. But the fact is that they got rid of Guadalupe because I feel that Guadalupe was trying to make a change for American Indians. Whereas all of these other ones, this Anna Negretti, she was a probation officer. Juliette Rudy, those are the two that have the staying power there. They were both law enforcement. Where is this directive coming from?
Yeah, exactly.
This office needs to be taken out of the state's hands and put elsewhere, because we cannot have law enforcement, the very people that harm us the most, in charge of us. It's never going to work.
Why isn't it a federal organization? Not that would probably be better, but I mean, MMIP, that should be federal, not a state run or a city run situation. Or maybe it should be a state run for the whole state, not just.
No, it cannot be in the state. It's got to be grassroots. It's got to be within our people. So the whole state of Minnesota, what we've got to have is we've got to have some sort of oversight committee that looks at every American Indian case that's here, whether it be a suicide, suspicious death, and overdose. We need an oversight committee that is going to look at this. So being that we have the largest urban population in this whole country of American Indians in Minneapolis, right?
Right.
We also have the highest overdose death in anywhere in the world is in Minneapolis. Minneapolis. Out of so what's happening here is that because we don't make up 100,000, we don't have 100,000 American Indians in Minneapolis, right?
Okay.
And in Minneapolis. So what happens is that if we don't make up that 100,000, those DHS statistics on their site don't apply to us because they do it per 100,000, right? We are less than 1% of the population.
Right.
But yet, when it's tracked from our American Indian foundations and organizations and hospitals, we make up 22% of the overdoses in Hennepin County alone. That is the worst statistic in the world. Not in the state, in the world is happening here, where all of these drug overdoses are going down on every other place but here, they are going up and they're skyrocketing.
Yeah. Well, and then this is the representative that actually put together, her name's Kelly, is that correct? That put together
Correct.
Allison's bill.
Yep.
And how did you get her to work on that?
Well, so Guadalupe Lopez was the executive director of Violence Free Minnesota. And so Guadalupe is a friend of mine. She knew this story. She tuned into this story like basically from the beginning. As a matter of fact, Guadalupe was she was there and she honored Arionna's when we removed life support of Arionna. Guadalupe was there with her daughters with hand drums singing and honoring my niece when she took her last breaths. And so Guadalupe has heard this story. I mean, this was many years later that her and I really became friends. And she heard the story of Allison, and I kept on bringing her to her and saying, what the hell is going on here? So she heard this. And as the executive director of Violence Free Minnesota, she made a whole new subcategory for suspicious deaths in Minnesota because of Allison Lussier's case. And so when I was there at one of they were giving me an award at Violence Free Minnesota, right? Representative Moeller was there because she supports domestic violence. All of this, she's trying to change this, for all of victims. And she said, "Hey, what should we do? What should we do?" Right. And so she actually doesn't have Allison's bill. She has the 72-hour state statute that she brought forth. So she brought the 72-hour state statute. She rolled that one in. That one will pass this year. They're extending it from 72 hours to 14 days. Do I love it? No.
Why does there have to be a time limit on it anyway? That makes no sense to me.
There's some I've heard three that's the third law that I've heard mentioned here that has a time limit, and none of them should.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, they don't protect. What they do is they protect the suspects. They protect the abusers. Is what they do. And I get it. I mean, I get it because, you don't want to leave something in OFP open forever, do you? I don't know. I mean, there are certain circumstances, but I believe that
stop.
Oh, did I touch something?
Yes.
Go ahead, darling. I touched something.
Okay.
I've been known to do that.
I just believe that when women call, and especially when American Indian or Black women call 911, we mean it.
Yeah.
Because we're afraid of the cops in the first place. You know what? I'm not calling them here because it's a joke. I'm calling them because I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Senator Kunish was the one that is pushing Allison's law forward, and she's from White Earth Reservation, so she's a descendant from White Earth. Okay. But I do want to mention Mariah Samuels. Mariah Samuels was the Black woman that was shot and killed by her partner and a boyfriend that she had dated for 7 months. She died September 14th of 2025. And if these people could move forward faster, and if we could get these systems changed, then we wouldn't have lost Mariah.
Yeah.
You know, law enforcement and MPD would have to pay attention a little bit more. Like in that case, just so that you know, I mean, she got justice, but she never should have lost her life.
Yeah.
She never should have lost her life, and her children should never be without her. But again, it was the failing of Minneapolis PD.
Yeah.
Because in that case, she had dated this guy for 7 months. He had spent 15 years behind bars, and she had broken up with him end of August, and he started getting really weird. She got beaten, pistol whipped. He was on federal parole, and on ring
Hope you
camera.
shouldn't have a gun.
No, kidding, right? Got pistol whipped, held the gun to her head, and strangled her, all on ring camera. She fought him off. She ran into her father's house, called 911. He was GOA, gone on arrival. Surprise, right?
Yeah.
They didn't go look for him. Gone on arrival. Why would you go look for a federal parolee that has a gun that pistol whipped a black woman and strangled her? Huh. Okay, Minneapolis PD. And so she filed for an OFP. I think that must have been like a Thursday or something. So she went and filed for an order for protection on Monday. That actually got served. So let's riddle me this one. They served it onto a man that had a gun, strangled her, pistol whipped her, was on federal parole, and didn't arrest him. Right? Okay.
That
so
makes no sense. You have the evidence.
Does
You have
it?
the evidence that he's a federal prisoner that should not be allowed a gun. And even if he didn't have the gun on him, you have the evidence.
Yeah.
He should have just been picked up and put in jail.
Right back in there, right? So 2 weeks went by, and so it was September 14th, and he was texting her. He kept on getting weirder, and he was texting her, threatening her, saying he was going to come over, kill her children, and her father. She calls 911, and the officer gets there, and the story was that he looks at it and he's like, just text messages, nothing I can do about it, because he got off at 6 a.m. He didn't want to take the report.
Oh my God.
So this guy, this David Wright, waited outside of her father's home, and he shot her 22 times that morning. By 7:30 a.m., she was dead. Shame on you, MPD.
Well,
Shame on you.
I hope the guy that didn't take the report can't look himself in the mirror. He doesn't deserve to be able to look in a mirror.
You know, this is the corruption that we are uncovering up here.
Yeah.
You know, this is truly the corruption. You know, that Alicia Gomez, you know,
Right.
that's another one that I think you should do a story on, because, you know, she married a man that had a history, and, you know, she wound up
We'll
dead
delve
on
into
her
it.
wedding date. Yeah, on her wedding day.
Yeah. I have a photo up right now. That's a picture you took when you got the privilege to go up there to the house and speak for Allison. And I'll tell you guys right now, it's on Facebook. I watched Jana give a beautiful speech, and it really was heart moving. And that's why I got in touch with her, and I'm like, we need to have a chat because you were so eloquent in speaking for the victims and what they're going through. And it really touched me how eloquent you were. Because I know you probably wanted to throw things at them, but you didn't. You kept control. Very professional. It was really great. Oh, right here, you guys, this is the Chief O'Hare talking to Jana. And everybody, see, she's not harming him. She's not. But yeah, this is him talking to her at one of the I think this was after the audit when you guys did a press conference, and he came up to you. And Irish, if you like Jana's earrings now, the earrings she wore at the press conference were outstanding. I'm just going to say that day, the big beaded hoops, those were awesome.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
yeah. And the one thing I appreciated about this press conference is when Jana got up to speak, it's on YouTube. She asked all the other families, Mariah's family and others, come join me. So even though this has hit the Native community hard, um, Jana is pulling in everybody, because anybody that is a minority or what they consider other, that you're not Susie Homemaker in the suburbs, um, you know, they're having to bind, get together and fight this, because these families, and I think that was one of the comments you made, was for the people that don't know what to do, that don't know what steps to take. What advice would you give a family that's starting this procedure that they've lost a loved one?
I think that when you know, you know.
Mhm.
When you know, you know. Don't ever remain silent. Speak that truth. I don't care if you have to say it a million times until somebody listens, because there's going to be somebody that's going to listen. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever get justice for Allison, because the negligence of the department and the failing of that investigation. But the way that I look at this is that all of this is happening because of George Floyd, because of the murder of George Floyd. Without that, I never would have had an audit. I just would have had evidence.
Right.
But that audit brought legitimacy to this case, to everything that I was speaking, right?
Right.
Without Allison's death, I kept on telling my niece, Tiffany. So Tiffany, I had 3 nieces, Allison, Tiffany, and Dewan. And Tiffany, my second niece, is Ariana's mother.
Okay.
And even though I kept on speaking Allison's name in every space that I was in, I kept on telling her, and we have T-shirts, we have banners, we have stickers. And I said, Tiffany, I said, I'm not stopping here. I said, because once I get justice for Allison, I'm getting it for Ariana. Yeah. And you know what? I'm getting it for Ariana before I'm getting it for Allison. Yeah. But Allison is the one, because of her life. She loved her niece that much that this made it possible.
Yeah. And really, the families, you need to document. Get any documentation you can. Make copies of everything. If you have to have someone that you can pass copies to keep them safe. Do screenshots of texts. Whatever you have to do to keep your evidence.
Record every conversation.
Yep.
Record the conversations, because I did not do that. And not only that, but one of the things that I learned that I should have done, which was probably one of my biggest mistakes, but I didn't know, is we could have filed for a data preservation request. Preservation request, which means that law enforcement has got to go back and save it.
Okay.
Had they done that, I would have had those phones and we would have had a done deal.
So everybody remember that. Data request.
Data preservation request.
Yes.
So,
very important.
So what if anything has ever happened with this scumbag that caused Allison's death? Has anything, have the police done anything to, bring him up on any charges? That, he as good as told people that he did it, and yet nothing has happened.
Well, he actually got pulled over in July of 2025 in a stolen vehicle. He led the police on a high-speed chase. He crashed, ran into a police car, ran on foot, broke into somebody's house, the family's house, held them by knife point, let them leave. He was holed up in a house for about 4 hours. There was probably a couple hundred officers, SWAT teams, everybody surrounding him for 4 hours. At that point, he was snapshotting, and finally, for the first time since Allison's death, he was taunting her son, Josh, saying, "Come get me, I'm right here," knowing that we couldn't get to him. Right? Because
Yeah.
we finally, and he was taunting him, basically saying that, "Look what I did," yeah. And there was some evidence left in that house that should give them reason to, arrest him for that too. But Minneapolis PD is inept at what they're doing. They're incompetent at doing an investigation. And Moriarty, she is as lax on violent criminals as anyone on earth.
That's
she lets people
ridiculous.
back into our community. Well, she charged this Chuck Fos. I think he got 7 years. He'll serve less than 3. He'll be out.
And he held a family hostage at knife point
Mm-hmm.
after breaking all these other laws, speeding,
Yep.
and
Well,
maybe 3 years on just these. We're not talking Allison's case, but just on that case, only get 3
Correct.
years. I mean, if
Correct.
I was that family that got held hostage, I'd be very upset that this man. And here's the thing: I bet you 10 to 1, no detective has gone to the jail to talk, or the prison to talk to him or his roommates, because this guy seems to have a big mouth. He's been telling stories about what he did.
You'd think, but I think that I'm not positive, but I think that this Andrew Schroeder, after this audit came out, he promised me saying that he was going to go. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's trying, but it's little too late.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys had this guy. They've had so many opportunities, so many chances. They have got so many witnesses in this case that it's disgusting. What?
And haven't they heard of a circumstantial case? That's where you put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and you might not have the center one with him, actually a photo of him committing the crime, but all the other ones go together, and it's called circumstantial. You can win cases this way, and he really is not a good person that people wouldn't believe the witnesses. I mean, that's...
Well, I think too it goes back to the statistic that you gave about the conviction rate in Minneapolis. 20%. That's a joke.
Yeah, that's nothing to be proud of.
Yeah.
So there's another story there, just so that you guys know. There was a kid that was overdosing on the side of the road in Minneapolis. Young kid. And I think he was 22 years old. And these 2 little girls, an 11-year-old and this 20-year-old, or maybe she was 17 and 11, were walking by this kid. And they recognized that he was overdosing, right next to this grocery store. And they're like, "Oh my God, we need Narcan," because he, is foaming at the mouth and stuff,
Right.
but he was still breathing. And this, there was a squad car, Minneapolis squad car, sitting across the street. And the 11-year-old, everybody, the 17-year-old's yelling, "We need Narcan, Narcan, we need Narcan." The 11-year-old runs across the street to the squad car, an MPD unit, and knocks on the window, says, "I need Narcan, help, we need Narcan." Just kind of rolls down his window, relaxed, and he says, "I don't have any Narcan. You got to call paramedics for that." It's their policy to carry 4 Narcans on them, right? And this little girl ran back about a block and a half to a house in Little Earth, which is our American Indian community. And some other people had come across with Narcan. So they started Narcanning this kid, right? And they started Narcanning him. Well, that finally, the squad car must have slowly spun around because he was watching in a house or whatever it was. And paramedics got there and they hopped out. We're not sure that the officer ever hopped out or not. Anywho, that kid died. And his name was Randy Rossett. And that was Allison's nephew.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
There was a report from Inspector Gomez after hearing this story. He actually made a complaint against his own officer. So
Wow.
MPD,
That was big.
Chief O'Hara, MPD, you guys want to keep on fucking with me? Excuse my language, but you do. You don't have any idea. You've done it now to 3 of my family members, and I'm done.
Yeah.
3 of my family members.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No one should have to go through that when all of these cases could have been prevented. Every single one could have been prevented.
You can't even make this up, can you?
Oh.
It's like if somebody put it on a TV show, we'd all be sitting there going, "Oh, this is fake. This can't be real."
Yeah.
You know, this isn't CSI. This is CSI with Barney Fife. And even Barney Fife had more morality than these guys seem to have. To me,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there are good cops up there. You know, in any organization, there's good that do their job, and I'm sure to them they're embarrassed. But you know what? If you're embarrassed by your colleagues, maybe you need to make some complaints. I'm just saying. Maybe you need to speak up. I have the picture of Mariah Samuels and her family right now because they were at one of the protests. Like she said, she's finally getting some justice, but it's another case of a minority woman that they just did not care if the case was going to get settled. And the thing is, people, we're all part of the same human family. You cut all of us, we all bleed red. Nobody's any different. We need to start caring about each other. We need to start sharing, you know, our stories, and we need to stand up because trust me, Jana has not stopped. She goes and she gives speeches and she shows up at events. She's not stopping and slowing down. So Chief O'Hara, if that's what you're hoping, sorry, not going to happen. She doesn't have it in her to slow down. It's just not going to happen. You picked the wrong woman. You picked the wrong woman's family to decide you guys didn't care. Quickly, let's go over some missing people. If remember these faces, put the cell phones down when you're out and about, because when you're out there, you could pass a victim. We know sometimes people leave on their own, but then they get in trouble and can't get home, or it's a situation we know trafficking happens. So please, if something feels off, call 911. If you're nervous about calling 911, we have a tip line. It's an email, tips, the number 4, trialjunkiesunited@gmail.com. Our first person, we've had him on before because we interviewed his sister. And because we're in Minnesota, David Storbakken, 41. He's been missing for over a year now. Location was the Speedway gas station at Rice Street and Minnesota Avenue in Roseville, Minnesota. Around 3 a.m., he's seen walking away from the Speedway. He's from the Leech Lake and Millie Lac tribes, and I probably said that wrong and I apologize. He's 6 feet, 135 pounds, brown eyes, brown hair. He was last seen wearing a gray hoodie, white pants. He is endangered. He is a diabetic. He'd recently had amputations of some of his fingers. He has a tattoo of a faded eagle on the back of his hand. So there's a $10,000 reward. Contact Crime Stoppers at 800-222-TIPS. And his sister let me know that they are going to actually be having an event at the St. Paul Tap Sports Bar and Gaming Company at 825 Jefferson Avenue. And it's a fundraiser. Please dine to donate. You have to come in to donate and have your meal. And this is to hopefully get some more awareness and to help find David. He needs to be brought home. Okay. We also have Haley Justine. She's 14 years old, guys. 14, from Billings, Montana. She's been missing since May 2nd, and the authorities are concerned. She's 5'2", 135 pounds, native, but we don't have her tribal affiliation. Red or auburn hair, brown eyes. Billings Police Department, 406-657-8461. Or the Clearinghouse at 406-444-2800. We have Olivia Thacker. She's been missing since May 8th from a Super 8 motel at 1717 West Highway 66 in Gallup, New Mexico. She's 33, Navajo, black eyes, black hair with blue bangs and highlights. Love the hair color, girl. Height 5'3", between 154 to 200 pounds. She was in a black shirt, black shorts, possibly barefoot. She has a cast on her left arm and an injury to her right thumb. Contact the Gallup Police Department at 505-863-9365 or Metro at 505-722-2002. Next, we have this young man. His name is Ozen Kyle Casador. He's been missing since May 9th. He's 16, from Farmington, New Mexico. He's got brown hair or brown eyes and black hair, 5'5", 110 pounds. He was in a black zip-up hoodie with white pants with a graffiti design, black boots, and a black beanie. Contact Farmington at 505-334-6622. He has a case number 26-30374. Remember, you can always call your local police too, because people do move around. Our last missing person is Vaden Lee Corleone.
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 Couillate. I'm not. I probably butchered that.
He's been missing since May 14th from Roosevelt County, Montana. He is got brown eyes, brown hair, 5'5", 115 pounds. Contact Roosevelt County Police Department, 406-653-6240, or the Missing Persons Clearinghouse of Montana, 406-444-2800. I also want to update you that on LMA Begay, the guy took his plea deal, and because he got 5 years and he's been in jail for 3, he gets out in 2. That's criminal. He left that poor woman. She was an elder. She was also a weaver, and he left her beside the road after he harmed her to pass away. In this plea deal, they did not make him tell where he left her. It's bad enough you did a plea deal, but you didn't even have the guts to tell them that he had to say where she was. I'm sorry. If you're an attorney and that's how you roll, you ain't doing your job in my book. So if you see something, you guys say something. If you see one of these people not in that area, call 911. Don't be afraid to do it. Now, Allison's law, that is moving through Minnesota legislature right now. Is that correct, Jana?
No.
You're hoping?
Well, I think it's going to be a bill for next year. Miss Moriarty wanted to put her little fingers on it and held it up.
You guys, we'll try and find an email for Miss Moriarty, and when we do, I will put it in our Discord server. Feel free to contact as a concerned citizen that these things are not getting passed. Be polite. Never be ugly, because advocates like Jana have to live in the community. So we're polite and we do this courteously. Just say, as Members of the community, we're concerned. Because that shouldn't even be a problem. That really shouldn't. That's I mean, I'm beginning to wonder who did I hit the wrong button
Yes,
again?
you did.
He's going to take this thing away from me. And there's Allison. She was beautiful. She needs justice. She didn't deserve what happened to her. This is her cousin,
Niece.
Arionna, or her niece. Thankfully, they're going to get some justice for her. But let's remember Allison. Remember, you guys, every killer, every predator depends on you being quiet. Please don't be quiet, because they just get away with it. And it wasn't a mannequin. It never is a mannequin. Jana, what last words do you want people to know? What can they do after listening to this?
I think you said it exactly. You know what? We can't do this alone. When you see injustice, stand up, fight back.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do.
So please, guys, share this episode on your social media. Put links. Tell people to come watch. Tell your friends. Don't be, this needs to get out, because the more people that know, the more people that have eyes on it. Don't be afraid to go on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it now, or Blue Sky or Facebook, and go ahead and link it to the governor, the mayor, the AG. Put their names on there and say, this is ridiculous. Minnesota, what are you doing to people? Because as the human community, we have a problem. We have a problem. So that's what we want you guys to do. Remember, there is a hotline. There's the Strong Hearts Native Helpline at 1-844-762-84383. BIA has an MM hotline at 833-560-2065, because sadly women get into these terrible domestic situations. It takes a long time for a woman to leave, because the first time she probably left, she got beaten badly, and the threats are there. It's very brave for them to finally walk away. So don't ever be one of these people that say, oh, she should have left. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. So please, we are counting on all of you guys raising your voices for Allison, for Jana, and her entire family. They've suffered too much. They've lost 3 family members. She's fought for these cases, and let's help her. Let's do what we can. You know, our motto is silence is betrayal. So let's not be silent, guys. And Jana, it was an honor to have you come and chat with us tonight. I wrote a song at the back end for Allison and you. And please, anytime you have an issue you want to talk about, or send someone our way, or if you have a missing persons poster you want us to show at the end of a show, please just email me, and we'll get it done for you, because that's what our platform's for. So you guys just remember, until next time, I want you all to stay informed, stay compassionate, keep seeking the truth, keep demanding justice, never stop speaking up. Doc will make some shorts in the next few days, and go ahead and make sure you're clicking on the shorts. The more traffic we get on this, the more these stories get out, and we want Allison's story out there. We love you. Remember, the criminals don't stop, so neither do we. So until next time, you guys keep fighting for justice. We'll see you Sunday. Say goodnight, Doc.
Good night, Doc.
Ciao, everybody.
Good night.
She stood at the door where the silence was loud, where the ones who swore to protect never came around. A niece with a smile and a life full of dreams, caught in the arms of a man and his schemes. The calls went unanswered, the reports filed away. Another native woman, another forgotten day. But Jana kept standing when the system sat down. She put on her armor and she held her ground. They said, let it go. They said, move along. But silence is a grave and she refused to belong to a world that keeps burying the ones that we love. No, not this time, not Allison. Allison, Allison, we are saying her name. Allison, Allison, we will carry her flame. The system found you, but we never will. We are saying your name on every hill. Allison, Allison, we won't be still. She walks into rooms where they don't want her voice. She knocks on every door like she never had a choice. Because love doesn't sleep and grief doesn't wait, and justice don't come to the ones who hesitate. If you're native or brown, they look right through your pain. Put your file in a drawer and forget your name. But Jana picked it up and she said, not today. She takes it to the microphone and she speaks anyway. They said, let it go. They said, move along. But silence is a grave and she refused to belong to a world that keeps burying the ones that we love. No, not this time, not Allison, Allison, Allison. We are saying her name. Allison, Allison, we will carry her flame. The system failed you, but we never will. We are saying your name on every hill. Allison, Allison, we won't be still. He wore trust like it meant nothing at all. He caught it love while he watched her fall. But she was never invisible, never too small, just failed by the ones who should have answered the call. Jana rose up with her grief and the fire. She carried Allison's name higher and higher, and every voice that joins her lifts it still. We are saying her name and we always will. No one should die at the hands of a lie, wrapped in a promise that was never meant to heal. She deserves safety, she deserved more than a case number rotting on some cold floor. But her aunt picked up the torch, wouldn't let it go dark. Walked into every room carrying Allison's heart. And we walk with her now, the ones who answer the call. If they won't say your name, we'll say it for them all. Allison, Allison, we are saying her name. Allison, Allison, we will carry her flame. The system failed you, but we never will. We are saying your name on every hill. Allison, Allison, we won't be still. Say your name.